Minecraft has been almost out for 13 years, and throughout this time it has received countless amounts of mobs to shape it into the game that it is today. However, some mobs unfortunately didn't make it into the newer versions of Minecraft and were forgotten about completely. Today, we are going to take a look at Minecraft's forgotten mobs and what has happened to them. Back in the Minecraft pre-classic days, when Minecraft was still just a newborn game, the world was pretty empty, just filled with cobblestone and grass blocks, and it felt pretty lifeless. History was made as the first ever mob was added into the Minecraft pre-classic version, and quite frankly, yes, the first ever mob in Minecraft was just called Mob. Mob was pretty much an entity in a Steve skin. Funnily enough, the Steve skin was inspired by one of Notch's unreleased games called Zombie Town, where the game's characters had in fact the default player skin, which was Steve. Firstly, mobs would randomly spawn in any place, but later on, the player was able to spawn them in by pressing G. The mob was pretty basic, they didn't drop anything and were passive. All they really did was move around the map aimlessly while swinging their arms. They were used for testing to implement future mobs and were later introduced as the model used for players' default skins. Funnily enough, monsters were added which also had the Steve skin but behaved differently to the normal mob. The monster would attack the player quite like the zombie will nowadays by walking into you, so we could assume the monster mob later got updated into the actual zombie mob that we have today. After a bit of testing and fast forwarding to the Java in-dev edition, Notch leaked a photo of a new mob called Rana. The mob model was changed into Rana, and she was a mob with human-like features in a frog costume and was one of the few humanoid mobs added into the game. She dropped sulfur, which was later renamed to gunpowder, and feathers or string when killed. She was the first mob in the game to drop items upon death. After Rana's addition, Steve and Black Steve model variants were added, and later on a final Beast Boy model was added into the game. And yes, Beast Boy is a reference to the show Teen Titans. However, they didn't have much purpose, and later on they were removed and the player model became Steve for the foreseeable future. These early game mobs shaped the game into what it is today. However, there was an even bigger mob that might have had potential, and that was the Red Dragon. During the 8th Secret Friday update, Notch revealed that he was planning to add dragons into the game. And on October 12th, 2011, he announced on Twitter that after the addition of the Ender Dragon, he would plan to add a slightly less dangerous Red Dragon which would be able to land but not destroy any terrain. Although the Red Dragon was talked about a while after that, the idea got shelved and no further things were mentioned about the dragon other than the fact that they will be implemented at some point. But when that point is, we shall never know. Many other mobs stay unimplemented, such as the mobs that didn't win the votes at Minecon's annually mob vote, and some of them were actually pretty interesting, such as the Iceologer, which can be found in Minecraft dungeons, or even the Moonbloom, Copper Golem, Penguins, you name it. There was a lot of them that didn't manage to make the final cut. But even with the mobs that never made the cut, there were some that made it into the game for a day on April Fool's Day, and no, I'm not talking about the removed Herobrine message every update that came out. The first of these mobs was the Diamond Chicken that had a 7% chance of spawning in the world during April Fools, and they were pretty much just rare chickens. Chickens weren't the only mob that got changed, as at some point we also had a variation of the Iron Golem called the Love Golem. They were meant to be the manifestation of the villagers' love, like, how cute is that? They were passive though and didn't attack the player nor monsters. But what was also cute was the moon dimension that Mojang added as a joke for flying up to Y700 on this day. In this dimension, you could find moon cows which walked backwards and wore glass on their heads to represent space helmets. There were also cool additions of the Nerd Creeper which spawned when the player used the cheat command and instead of gunpowder they dropped the 3D item, or the Pink Wither which when spawned using a potted rose and pink wool could be fed sugar to grow its heads, the ray tracing humanoid entity, or even the redstone bug, which was a redstone variation of the silverfish. There were lots of unique mobs added during April Fool's Day that were forgotten about due to the fact that they only got added in once for a day every year. However, to this day, Minecraft has many unused mobs in the game that can be spawned with commands that you may not even know about. One of these examples is the infamous Giant. The Giants are oversized zombies and they've been around since the InfDev version. It is still unknown as to why they're still in the game, but I assume they were just too lazy to remove them, but they are pretty cool as they're probably the biggest mob in the game. Another cool mob is the zombie horse, which is an unused variant of the regular horse mob. Unlike normal horses, zombie horses were able to breathe underwater and slowly regenerate health. And honestly, they look pretty cool, so Mojang, please add them back. They would complete my horse collection. Speaking of animals in the game, another unique mob that was in the game for a short period of time was the killer bunny. Taking the appearance of a white bunny with red eyes, this small guy looked harmless but could kill the player within seconds. Unfortunately, later on they would be removed as they were deemed to be too OP and a joke for trolling new players in the game. Speaking of OP though, the Illusioner is a type of villager that casts illusions of himself while in combat. If you ever played Minecraft Dungeons, you can fight the Illusioner there. However, in the Java edition of the game, he's an unused mob for the time being. I personally think it would be quite cool to see him being added into raids. The agent was a golem-like mob added into Minecraft Education Edition and Bedrock Editions that would allow the player to learn coding by allowing players to program actions into the mob. Quite an intriguing concept for a mob, to say the least. Another mob that was quite similar alongside the agent was the NPC mob. However, this mob, being very similar to the villager, had no real use in the game. The Elder Guardian Ghost was an unused mob added to the Bedrock edition of Minecraft. The Elder Guardian Ghost had the same model and texture as the Elder Guardian, but didn't really do much and had a scuffed tail model. When spawned outside of water, it floated upwards until it would inevitably despawn. Most likely this was planned to originally be a part of the Elden Guardian mob boss fight, but we are not sure. However, we can conclude that Minecraft has had many different mob additions throughout its lifetime, where some may not have stayed around as long as others, but without all these mobs, the game wouldn't feel the same. If I missed out any mobs, be sure to comment them down below. But if you enjoyed, consider liking the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace, and bye bye guys.